Hey guys, so as promised, here's a review for Don't Be Dumb, A$AP Rocky's latest album. This is an album that's been very long awaited. He dropped his last full project, I believe, 8 years ago now, or 7.5 years ago, just about. So it's been highly anticipated, and you know, his life circumstances have also changed a lot. So it'll just be interesting to see how he tackles this new stage of his life and addresses the things that he's been through, furthers the evolution of his sound, while also giving us what we came to the album to hear, and that classic A$AP Rocky confidence and swag. And wow, that was low-key glaze, my fault. But that's what he's known to bring to his lyrics. A big selling point for me to be interested in this album was the fact that he collaborated heavily with Danny Elfman, or he said he collaborated heavily with Danny Elfman, who, if you don't know, is a very famous film composer. He composed Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, the original Batman with Michael Keaton. He's composed all of Tim Burton's movies. So if you watched Charlie and the Chocolate Factory as a kid, if you watched Nightmare Before Christmas, if you watched any of those movies, Edward Scissorhands, Beetlejuice, he composed all those movies and more. So it'd be great to hear his influence on the album as well, because he's someone who I really respect. Rocky actually mentioned in an interview that his favorite movie as a kid was Nightmare Before Christmas, and that he loved Tim Burton. He even got Tim Burton to design the cover for the album. So he's definitely tapped into that microcosm of American pop culture. So it'd be interesting to see his experimentation into a kind of new wave for him, I guess. And yeah, that's it for the intro. So here we go. I'm just gonna review the album track by track and then kind of summarize everything at the end and give my final score. Okay, starting off with the Order of Protection. This was a cool little intro. Has some nice choral samples. This kind of like British boys choir. It has that kind of that haunting feel. This might be the Danny Elfman influence, I don't know. And he runs into some good flows, and it's a good tone setter. It also addresses the snitching ordeal, which will come back throughout the album, and something that we'll address further later on. Okay, getting into Helicopter, the second track. This is actually one of my favorites. Like, the beat is insane. And it was actually produced, I think co-produced by A$AP himself, which is very impressive. It reminds me a bit of Carter Got Wings, the producer named Carter Got Wings, like his style. He produced most of Playboi Carti's most recent album, as well as Euphoria by Kendrick. And he also has some cuts on this album as well, but not this song specifically, but that kind of distorted sound, the relentless 808s, that frenetic energy, is definitely reminiscent of him, and it works very well for the track, and it has a lot of catchy flows by A$AP Rocky to kind of go on top of it and make for a really fun and re-listenable track. Next track is Store Your Flow. Keeps with the same grimy, distorted sound. It's clear that A$AP Rocky is like updating his sound to reflect how much rap has changed since he dropped last in 2018. He disses Drake on this one. He says, the chorus is, "First you stole my flow, so I stole your beat," which is a reference to Drake being with Rihanna before, Rihanna leaving him, and she ended up with A$AP. This man also says, "Dudes getting BBLs, you lucky we don't body shame," which is objectively hilarious, and obviously a reference to BBL Drizzy. I will say something I want to point out about this track. While it is good, it's a full 2 years late. Like, Drake dissed Rocky on Family Matters, which dropped like early 2024. It's 2026, and we're now getting a response. So like, it doesn't quite have the same weight, but I guess it's cool to see him address it like one way or another. Next cut on here is Stay Here for Life. This is my favorite song on the album. It uses like this ethereal, airy, like melodic loop that was also sampled on, I think, Ken Carson's song Mewtwo. But it sounds very different there than from here, and I think it fits better for this track. Brent Faiyaz floats onto the hook of this song with an incredibly catchy melody and really tight harmonies, as he usually does on features. I wish this song came out during the summer, because it may have ended up being a top 10 hit. Like, it still could be, but the drums on this perfectly ride the line between calming and bouncy, which is perfect for a summer type of hit. Rocky doesn't do anything crazy on the track, but he doesn't even need to do much. It does clock in at about 6 minutes total, because there's 2 separate outros clocking in at a minute each, which weren't necessary. I like the first musical outro, but then there's a minute-long speaking outro as well, and I kind of think you have to just do maybe one or the other there, especially because you have so much great momentum from that track. But honestly, that's a pretty small thing, and it's a personal thing as well, so it didn't detract from it a big amount. The next track is PLAYA. Carter Got Wings, who I mentioned earlier, actually did produce this one. but he actually opts for a more melodic sound with some fluttering keys, some cloudy synths, and a wobbly bass, and some lo-fi Thundercat vocals, which all just work very well together. The premise of a song is basically him as a former player trying to teach a younger dude how to properly be a player, which is a pretty interesting angle. But the song didn't amount to anything too special, but I think it was honestly intended to be something fun and catchy and that you vibe to in the car. So it wasn't necessarily a very strong track, but it worked well enough. It does a super long, slowed down outro thing that Drake has everyone doing now, which I was never a huge fan of, but it's just one of those rap trends that caught on, and it's inescapable now, but that's cool. So now we're at No Trespassing. I wasn't feeling this one as much. I like the beat, especially that kick pattern and that kind of static-y rim that bounces off the kick, and it makes for a unique soundscape. Otherwise, but it just felt a bit repetitive, and there's some pretty unremarkable lyrics. Wasn't a bad track, just wasn't too special. Next would be Stop Snitching. Great production again. It really hasn't missed yet, like production wise. It's centered around this very minimalist yet distinct, like siren-like synth that comes at the end of every measure, which definitely gave it some great flavor. In terms of content, it's always cool to see a rapper address the elephant in the room, which obviously in this case, for some quick background, would be his deadly assault charge from 2021, which led to him facing 24 years in prison, but the jury found him not guilty. The man who brought the charges against him and testified against him was actually his colleague, A$AP Rocky, and this is looked down upon in the rap scene, obviously, especially considering that he ultimately ended up being not guilty. So this track kind of covers his feelings about his friend betraying him and about snitching in general, which he obviously has a unique perspective on. It's cool to hear someone who actually has been through these things speak against snitching, as opposed to some 13-year-old kid from like Rhode Island who spams comments on Instagram saying, "Bro, I can't believe you snitched, that's so corny." Like, shut up, bro. Like, this does not affect you at all. You commented this during your water break at lacrosse practice. Like, you should not have any say in this. Sorry, that was a tangent. But it was cool to hear Rocky give some insight into his highly publicized trial on this track. Sauce Walka's verse goes crazy on this track. My favorite bar is, "Dudes will lie to their mama and daddy, but go tell the truth to an officer." I thought that was pretty funny. I laughed out loud when I heard that. Moving on to STFU. This is the worst track on the album by a good amount. The refrain is literally just him screaming, "Shut the F up!" like at the top of his lungs. I don't know why he decided to do that. And the beat is some weird, dark EDM hyperpop track that you'd hear at a rave at like 2 a.m. It's like the track that plays when you turn to your boys and you're like, "All right, y'all, I'm ready to go." It's like it's that track. I always appreciate experimentation, and I'll give him credit for that. But sometimes experiments fail, and that's okay. And this one, it failed. Now, the next track, Punk Rocky, this is an experimental track that works very well. It reminds me of Sundress a bit, one of Rocky's hit songs, but it goes further with the rock influences and feels like a true, not punk rock per se, but pop punk song, which is cool because I love pop punk. It has that persistent tempo, that tight bass line, that wistful guitar lead with some really nice chorus and reverb, give it that spacey, dreamy feel. And it has the angsty lyrics to add a cherry on top of the whole pop punk influence. And some decent Rocky vocals, like, decent for a rapper, just good enough to get by. You can argue that the Danny Elfman influence shows up again here, but in a different way. You might not know that, but before being a film composer, Danny Elfman was part of a new wave punk rock band called Oingo Boingo. So that paired with Winona Ryder, who has worked with Tim Burton and Elfman on a plethora of films, starring in a music video for this song, could indicate where its influence stems. But honestly, Rocky has flirted with rock and other styles before, so this could all just be him, taking it to another level. But all in all, I really enjoyed this track. Now, Air Force goes back to that distorted virtual sound we heard on a helicopter, Story Flow, and some other cuts from the beginning of the album. I guess I may be getting a bit tired of that sound or fatigued, because this track doesn't work as well for me. The pre-chorus actually switches the beat into this great, lush, half-timed, intoxicating melody that reminds me of LSD, which is a hit of Rocky's from 10 years ago and arguably one of his best songs. But then it abruptly jumps back into that grimy, driving bass with those glitchy synths, and it creates a sense of whiplash for the listener, which I'm not sure was intended, but even if it was intended, it's just not for me. But then the outro goes back into the LSD-like refrain, so I started to enjoy it again. I don't know, it was kind of a mess. They layered the outro with some great vocals from Spencer Sutherland, who's doing some vocalizations that sound like a modernized Stephen Perry from Journey. It's actually really cool. So that's a high point. I guess I'm mixed on this track. I don't know how I feel about the whole beat switching over and over thing. I just make it 2 separate songs, I feel like, especially when the beat switches have no thematic significance whatsoever, and it's just to kind of create that whiplash. Just doesn't really work for me. Whiskey, I wasn't huge on this song the first time around, but after a second listen, I liked it a bit more. The beat drop is really nice, and it serves as like cool misdirection from how the track starts out. Some catchy flows from Rocky, and a great outro from, and I'm not joking, the lead singer of Gorillaz and Westside Gunn. Crazy combo. Robbery, this track features Doechii, who gets a lot of slander, like a surprising amount, honestly. Like any comment section you see about her will be like all negative from people who I think just maybe find her voice or delivery annoying. Either that or just miserable dudes who just like to hit on women. I don't know. I'm not gonna sit here and act like I'm a huge fan of hers, but I do think she's probably overhated. Like, she is talented. And on this track, her and Rocky are great. It's kind of this left field, kind of a live play over music, where her and Rocky are acting out this Bonnie and Clyde story with each other in the form of rapping back and forth and exchanging verses. The chemistry is great, and it's impressive how they managed to ride a beat so well that basically has no drums. Like, it's just straight up acoustic jazz the whole time. It's not something I would bump in like the car necessarily, but it's a very technically and sonically impressive track that centers around a really imaginative concept. Don't Be Dumb, the next track, is more introspective. It features lyrics about his relationship and trying to keep his woman happy and trying not to be dumb and mess up, basically. It's very nice. I would have liked more on that on this album, actually. Like, he's got 3 kids and a long-term partner now. Like, I guess I went into it expecting a bit of a more evolution type of album, like 444 or Mr. Morale. But before re-listening, I threw my expectations out the window because that isn't something that he promised or that he said the album would be. Like, they were just my preconceived notions. So listening to this album again, as presented, has been a great listen, and all the small moments I get where he does get more reflective, like on this track, are great. And the second half of this song, Trip Baby, is really nice too, and Rocky hits a really smooth flow that I enjoy. The End is another highlight for me. It has some cool commentary on the state of the world with regards to war, politics, education, violence, but it does so in a way that's not corny or forced at all, because I hate tracks that are just like too preachy and self-righteous. Like, I'm gonna turn it off every time. But this isn't that at all. And Jessica Pratt has some really chilling, haunting vocals on the outro of this that are a great touch. SWAT Team features this tremolo orchestral stab sample throughout the track that goes pretty hard. The drum pattern is pretty underwhelming to me. Like, I feel like the nature of the sample could have been done a little more justice with the drum programming, but the beat still hits pretty hard. And Rocky hands in a solid performance on it. Not a bad track by any means, just wouldn't say it was a highlight. And Fish and Steak, the final track, was a bit underwhelming also, I think, for a final track at least, like for that final impression. I think it would have been better towards the middle. And it also was underwhelming as far as like a Rocky and Tyler collabs go. And I'm not really a huge fan of the chorus, but Tyler's verse is good. Tyler's verse is pretty good. I don't know, I thought it was solid, but that's it. Like, that's all it was just solid. And as a final outro track, it just didn't really do it for me. In short, I think this was a pretty good album. Like, Rocky really flexed his versatility here. I mean, he was drawing from pop punk, jazz, hyper pop, R&B, and different subgenres of rap, like rage, melodic rap, conscious rap, trap, bounce, etc. I think there were a few spots where the experimentation didn't quite work, but he definitely hit more often than he missed. A couple tracks ran into a bit of repetitiveness, so that led to them feeling a little long. But even in those tracks, you can definitely hear the care that was put into the album. I liked it more in my second listen, kind of free of any expectations or preconceived notions about what the album could be. And, with that out the window, I found myself enjoying the majority of the record, honestly. So overall, I'd rate the album an 8 out of 10. On first listen for me, it was a 7, but definitely went up, as I mentioned earlier, to an 8. My favorite tracks were Helicopter, Stay Here for Life, Stop Snitching, Punk Rocky, and Don't Be Dumb. And my least favorites were No Trespassing, STFU, and Air Force. So that's it for this review, guys. My next video will likely be a review of The Rip, the new movie with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck and Steven Yeun and Tiana Taylor. So definitely be on the lookout for that, and I'll see you guys next time.